Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here today. Joyce and I will be talking to you about finding your fit in microcontent. Let's begin with a brief introduction.
Thanks, Catherine. My name is Joyce. My background in video game design fuels my enthusiasm for user experience, intuitive design, and future-proofing content. I am a content specialist and information architect at Precision Content Authoring Solutions, where we empower people through better content, processes, and technology. I am also the chapter president of Society for Technical Communication, Toronto. I am also a member of CIDM, Information 4.0 Consortium, Women in Tech, and Women in STEM. I'd like to think that it means I have a ridiculous drive to arm myself with the knowledge, skill sets, and tools, and the positions to help others.
Hello, my name is Catherine, and I'm an associate information architect at Precision Content Authoring Solutions. I'm a member of the Society for Technical Communications and member of the McMaster University Alumni Association. My passion is for expanding and contributing to the field of information architecture wherever I can. So now that you all have heard a little bit about us, let's proceed. This is our outline for today's presentation. We're going to be finding a fit for microcontent in our day-to-day, history, understanding, the world, and you. Let's first take a look at finding a fit in our day-to-day.
So conversational user interfaces are changing how we consume information. It is a difficult and emerging technology revolving around microcontent, and the most popular of which would be chatbots. But chatbots are really just the tip of the iceberg, the most accessible parts of the tech we have today. Another common example would be automated assistants. Automated assistants using voice are easier to use when you're trying to perform a function, whereas chatbots have GUI and text that makes it easier for you to navigate, which is useful for exploring, learning, and digging for more information. Now, although both can draw from the same data source, they serve very different functionalities. What this means is that our information must be able to seamlessly shift between the modalities. Our content systems have to be suitable for omnichannel delivery. Omnichannel means focusing on delivering the right content at the right set of channels at the right moment to provide the most value to the user. We have to implement microcontent at more than just the writing level, which means planning, strategizing, managing, training, and implementations. The flow of the microcontent through the organization is what enables some omnichannel delivery. So why is omnichannel delivery so important? Well, that's because we are bridging across this transitional phase of traditional outputs, like PDFs, to the newer technologies, like chatbots. And chatbots aren't 10 years out. The technology is already here. But is the content ready for the technology? To see where we're headed, let's take a quick look at how we got here. Approximately 100,000 years ago, we started speaking. Information was communicated through oral tradition. But about 60,000 years ago, we started writing things down. Information was communicated through storytelling and handwritten text. This was content 1.0, where information was communicated from one person to many people. And over time, we made content more permanent and portable. With the invention of the Gutenberg press in the 1700s, we see content 2.0, where information was communicated to many more people. And with the emergence of the World Wide Web, we saw content 3.0, where information is communicated from many people to many other people. The content proliferates, and everything is free or stolen. Now we approach content 4.0, where once again, information is communicated by speaking. But now we have integrated new technologies. Now we are no longer looking for just information. We expect quality and experience, and we're willing to pay for information. Now, as our content got bigger, it also became more complex with more effort, more tools, and more technologies. But at the same time, the units of content got smaller, more numerous, and more difficult to manage. We now use content that is more precise and technical, more collaborative, and exists as a part of a total system, usually delivered in ways that it was not originally intended. and the volume of the content, so the total breadth of human knowledge, grows exponentially. To put that into perspective, a person in the 1700s in their entire lifetime would be exposed to about the same amount of information that we today can find in a single Saturday edition of the New York Times. But much of that is dark data, content we cannot use that is polluting the good content, whether it is locked up, proprietary, in a format we don't understand or cannot access. We know this as rot. It's redundant, obsolete, or trivial content, making it difficult for us to get to the right content when we actually need it. So we're left trying to sort through this phenomenon that we call the digital landfill. And we're frustrated because we don't get the information we need, whether it's inaccurate or irrelevant. Conversational UIs cannot return complex information. So how many of us have asked our Google Home a question like, how do I make tea? Only to have it tell us when tea was invented? Whether it's on the internet or in an intranet, these interactions with conversational UIs lead to consumers looking for a human being. So that costs us customer satisfaction, positive responses to the organization, and of course, budgets. So what do? Do we hire a whole new team? Well, that creates duplicated information in silos, leading to inconsistencies. How do we change how we create, manage, and distribute content? How do we get the information we need to work with? The answer is answers. Users are not looking for lots of information. They are looking for answers. Your answer is microcontent. So we talked about the technology, but it's not possible without methodology. Structured writing is for human consumption, and structured markup is to enforce structured writing, allowing consumption by technology. And the solution is the marriage between writing standards and the framework. So let's talk methodology. The term microcontent was coined by Jacob Nelson in the early 90s and has since evolved a bit. Microcontent is content that is about one primary idea, fact, or concept. It is easily scannable so that you can quickly grasp it. It's labeled for clear identification and meaning, and appropriately written and formatted for any use at any time it is needed. But it is not microcontent just because it's small. For example, it needs rich metadata. And this is not as daunting as it might sound because we already see examples of it everywhere, but we'll get back to that. I'm going to briefly break down the principles of microcontent, and you may already be familiar with some of these. Think about some examples of content that you feel matches the characteristics I'm about to describe. The methodology for microcontent is to write content that answers questions. So intelligent microcontent can answer those same questions. You can change your existing content into microcontent to adapt for conversational user interfaces. So the principles of intelligent microcontent are focus, function, structure, and context. Let's start with focus. Focus means microcontent must be about only one subject. Traditionally, we tend to pack as much information into as little real estate as possible. And this has a very negative impact on both technology and humans because the only way we can actually use that information is to unpack it. Now, as humans, we solve this with things like visual cues. Examples will be heading, paragraphs, white spaces, and whatnot. But technology doesn't read information the same way that humans do. So we have to break content down by information types. Think of microcontent as building blocks of information. They're very precise and very concise conforming blocks of content that we use to serve up as microcontent, but used to build any number of traditional types and emergent types. You've got your knowledge bases, your PDFs, your user guides, your chatbots, your assistants, your intelligent calculator systems. Now, our next principle of intelligent microcontent is function, which means microcontent must be categorized to identify user intent. Now, remember, I just mentioned information types. Structured authoring models use information types to categorize different types of information. The most widely used structured authoring model is the Darwin Information Typing Architecture, DITA, which uses the information types reference, task, and concept. There are other structured authoring models too. And as an example, let's take a look at precision content model. These are information types from precision content model. Reference describes the things the user needs to know. Task instructs the user how to do things. Concept explains things the user needs to understand. Process demonstrates to the user how things work. Principle advises the user what they need to do or not do and when. Now, you may be using a different structured authoring model and it will have different information types. What's important is that we use those information types and that we identify the specific reader functions and the intended reader responses to the content. This is really important for new technology and emerging technologies around the chatbots and the like. Because if we can understand the intent of the information, then we can automate a lot of the training that needs to go on to be able to help technology understand how to answer those questions. By understanding intent, we can populate the system with questions like, how do I do this? How does that work? What is this? Don't worry about memorizing this. Just remember, how a user asks questions is based on how they intend to use the information. Each of these information types inform reader intent. So how do you fit this knowledge into your content? Well, knowing that information type, meaning we know the intent of the information, helps to inform how these topics and blocks are titled, how we're going to construct these blocks into topics, their order, and their structure, the proper voice and tense through each type of information, specific authoring models to substructures to include within the different blocks, and within the blocks, what we do with and how we write short descriptions for each information type. Which leads us to the next principle of intelligent microcontent, structure. Structure means that microcontent must use predictable patterns and language. Structured authoring means a standardized methodological approach to content creation, incorporating systematic labeling, modular topic-based architecture, constrained writing environments, and the separation of content and form. If this sounds familiar, that's because this is from the Data Style Guide, which, as mentioned, is the most widely used structured authoring model. These guidelines actually apply to any good structured authoring model because it is based on how our human brains process information. Working with structured content, we aren't just talking about technology anymore. We're talking about making information more accessible to humans. It's easier to navigate and use and retain, and at the same time, make technology more accessible to the content. So you don't have a separate source of content for humans and a separate source for technology. We still maintain that single source of truth, and the content is both human and technology ready. Finally, our last principle of intelligent microcontent is context, which means that microcontent must be easily relatable to other content. The microcontent piece is a product of a more precise form of authoring. So that means we burst out source content into small, manageable pieces, but it's not to say that we work on blocks in isolation. We still need to maintain a topic-based paradigm, but we are looking at writing in a way that can be burst into standalone blocks. All the blocks need to work together. We write to produce microcontent from topics, rather than writing microcontent to produce topics. Let's revisit information types. We talked very briefly about the most well-known structured authoring model, DITA, which has 3 information types: reference, task, and concept. Then we also talked about other structured authoring models. And as an example, we looked at precision content information types: reference, task, concept, process, and principle. Now, why does this matter? Well, because we're going to talk about how microcontent fits into a larger context. And information types also tells us how the different building blocks come together. Here, we have the information types from DITA. Now let's once again look at the examples of precision content models, which you may have recognized is actually specialized from the data model. We have these relationships that are clearly defined. So the changes to one type of content will prompt changes to other related content in the ecosystem. For example, if I change something in the process, like how a system works, then it could affect the task, how to use the system. But changing the task, how to use the system, does not mean it changes the process, how the system works. All of these things fit together into a larger content ecosystem, and we extend this out to the enterprise, and we get a larger model. And on top of that, we built layers of domain specialization for different organizations or for specificity. For example, marketing. But understanding this underlying meta model helps build larger models on top. What this allows us to do is maintain the microcontent meta model, allowing content to flow seamlessly between the different content silos. And that is intelligent microcontent in a nutshell. What content can you think of that already matches what we just learned about focus, function, structure, and content? I bet you already have a running list.
We actually came up with a few examples of our own too. And they're not just content, but interactive microcontent. Google Micro Moments deliver small snippets of highly contextualized or highly personalized information through a person's device, like notifications. And this is all based on the passive data you provide. In learning and training, microlearning is one of the biggest buzzwords. It makes the information available to users to learn when they need it the most. It's not trying to teach a course, but instead deliver a lesson at the user's fingertips, making it highly contextual to their situation. Microformats are used to mash up content from multiple sources. For example, we see these as func snippets from websites, like weather, news, and recipes. As you can see, microcontent already fits into our everyday lives. I'll now explain how microcontent fits into your organization's content ecosystem, and consequently, the world. Microcontent has a place in every industry. There are multiple ways that we can employ its base principles to aid in information consumption. Beginning with development, through to marketing, and ending with sales, incorporating microcontent strategies to support the flow of information enables greater reuse, consistency, and effective information conveyance throughout the entire supply chain. Let's talk development. As we learned earlier, microcontent involves clear labeling and single concept-driven chunks. Microcontent becomes an essential tool for ensuring how well content ranks in SEO. The fundamentals of microcontent ensure that information can be correctly indexed. Web developers often employ the concepts derived from microcontent in writing websites. Microcontent strategies promote effective reuse. The labeled chunks of information can easily be applied to various contexts throughout the website to assert a consistent messaging. And as a fringe benefit, you're able to cut your work down by essentially half. Microcontent has a bright future in the field of engineering, as it becomes an essential tool for powering applications with interactive content. Microcontent encourages parsing content into digestible concepts that can easily be organized using metadata, to say, for example, be used to provide the chat in chatbots. Another example is in augmented reality and virtual reality. Microcontent strategies can be used to organize APIs to be effectively used in these technologies. Microcontent strategies can be used in drafting API documents to cater to the needs of developers who are attempting to solve complex issues using the API documents. Further, the small pieces of content can easily be pulled from the APIs to appear for users of augmented reality and virtual reality technologies. We've talked about how we can use microcontent in our products and for our customers. But how can microcontent be used to facilitate internal communications? Microcontent is key to align your entire organization, as the same small chunks of content used by, say, the development team can also be carried over and used to aid a marketing team. In marketing, the goal of microcontent transitions to become a small single concept-driven chunk designed to entice customers. Microcontent for marketing demonstrates the value of your content in a short, easily consumable chunk that may encourage someone to further pursue the long-form information you wish to convey. A scannable Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter post can very easily become a gateway to a larger article, blog post, or even website to convey information about a product or service. The core components of microcontent for marketing adapt to include three primary pieces. The first, a target, meaning a specific targeted demographic. The second, a service. The content does something that is authentically helpful to someone who reads it. And last, a call to action. The content is drawing the person in and giving them something they may want to do, either accessing a link or maybe even sharing a hashtag. The qualities of microcontent to be focused on in marketing is microcontent that is repeatable, concise, and trusted. Your microcontent can be used for greater alignment throughout the entire organization. That same piece of microcontent used by the development team to either build the website, power the chatbot, or comprise the API can now be repurposed and reconfigured for marketing purposes using these strategies. From marketing, let's discuss sales and see what uses the same content can be used for. Microcontent has seen a relatively recent uptick in the sales side of organizations, as it is used to aid in individual selling, accelerated customer acquisition, and revenue growth. Microcontent strategies are employed to curate content that is used to support and operate as an instantaneous reference for sellers. The easily scannable quality of microcontent aids sellers in consuming content quickly to translate to customers. Roughly, how many hours do you spend a month for in-call support? Or how many questions do you receive about a product or service? Answering these questions is where microcontent strategies can be of service. Microcontent strategies can aid the sales team by configuring content for, say, pre-call and in-call support content. Microcontent chunks regarding product and service specifications created by the development team can be translated to sales as a quick reference sheet detailing pros and cons of a product or service for certain users. Or it can be translated into prepared questions for users and next step options. Those in sales have also revealed that microcontent strategies are often employed to share changes to the market and competition, as well as share updates on new ideas and practices. All in all, rapid responses to customer questions can at times be critical for sales prospecting, selling, and customer acquisition. Does this diagram look familiar? We've adapted it from earlier in the presentation to now reflect the domain specializations for sales. We've included where selling, sales prospecting, and the result of customer acquisition fit in the flow of content in a content ecosystem adapted for sales. Like Joyce stated earlier, changes applied to any one of these types prompt changes to other related content in the entire ecosystem. Extracting and preparing microcontent answers can aid in the flow of information from seller to buyer and only aid delivery throughout the whole organization. Now, based on everything we talked about today, I'm sure you can already begin to see how microcontent can really improve the flow of information through any organization. We discussed 3 different departments that use information in 3 very different ways. But that same base information can easily be used by each. Of course, microcontent doesn't just magically pop up in our organizations. Microcontent didn't just fall into our lap, nor will it implement itself. That's where you come in. Our journey towards microcontent is simply the next step in the evolution of intelligent content needed to support omni-channel delivery. We went from doc-based authoring to topic-based authoring, and then to block-based authoring. But right now, we're simply looking at becoming more precise with our metadata, writing, and style to support emerging technologies.
So, are you ready for it? Well, what does ready mean? Remember, we talked about the need for planning, strategizing, managing, training tools, implementation, and of course, writing. Well, I think every single one of you are actually ready to transform all of that into something future-proof. If you're in a larger organization, it could sound really scary, intimidating, but you're actually more than well equipped to start. How? Well, first of all, the first step to your journey is figuring out where you are and what you have. Perform a content audit. Who is your audience? What is the intended response? What is the purpose of the content? Perform a content analysis. Does the content align with the principles of intelligent microcontent? Focus, function, structure, and context. Once you identify those gaps, then you are ready to start solutioning. You begin solutioning every aspect of that content system. What that means is that you future-proof the entire content system with microcontent so that it becomes infinitely adaptable to technological innovations. And as we all know, innovation is fueled by information. We can use precision to improve information usability for humans and technology, because technology won't slow down, and technology won't solve the content problem on its own. The solutions won't land on your doorstep because we are the solution and you are the solution.
Thank you for attending. You can find us at joyce@precisioncontent.com and Catherine@precisioncontent.com. Follow us at PCAS Inc. and find us on precisioncontent.com. We hope you enjoy the rest of the event and have a good one. Stay safe.